Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Do you hear me? Yep, that's better. All right. So, you had a very positive day, inshallah, and so far it's very positive, and you're all in the positive until you come to the finance and it comes to the negative, because the budget doesn't add up. And that's where you get all your hopes dashed, but inshallah we will lift it again. So don't worry about it. We'll get there somewhere, somehow tonight. I just want the PowerPoint to be up. Where's the hair? Up, Sister Noor. So, as you've been discussing all day, all these projects, all these suggestions, they need two things. They need money, and they need the manpower. And the manpower, as you've probably seen it or heard it from the last session, can be volunteers, but most likely even the volunteers, they need to be paid somehow. So all comes back to money, and all comes back to funding. Even the communication needs money, okay? And needs money, and you can see even the government, and I just was going to comment about communication. Communication is two ways. We can send so many communication from the center. If the communications will not bounce back saying we received it and we act on it, it's not going to work, because that's how it works. It's just both ways. I don't know if that's being said. Time's up. 5 minutes already. Okay. No, it's not. I've just got 3 minutes, so and I'll get the start of it. How can I change the things? This one doesn't work? Oh, okay. Does it work? Okay, wonderful. So, next. For Islamic society, I'm not talking about any other societies or associations. So the assets for us is masjids. They don't generate money, okay? Centers, they don't. School, we have only one, and that's very minimum contribution to the total budget is about 50,000 a year. So we need to get somehow some money. Structure to pay, so far we have a committee. They don't get paid, they're all volunteers, they for free for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them and count it in their day of judgment hasanat. Imams, they do need to get paid because they're full-time and they're doing all the good job and services as you've been discussing all day. The employees that we have already 3, 2 in the offices here and 1 is the accountancy. How many we need more? Your day of work so far, I can tell you, you need about 20. So 20, the 3 that we have, they're costing us in the vicinity of, so we'll get the number from Muhammad Balbisi in a minute, but you'll be informed how much it is. So then you add it for each employee that you add to this. We need asset to be preserved, so the keep-ups and the maintenance and fixing, all these activities get these premises to be damaged or need repairs. Add to that, there are projects that needs to be funded, and you've been discussing all day all these projects that we need to do. The growth in the society finances from the 1990 to 2000, the figures are very sketchy for me, but they spend about hundreds of thousands on legal things, but I can't be sure how much it was. From 2001 to 2010, because I was involved in it, so I can tell you it was in the hundreds of thousands, the budgets being done, because the building of Wandana Masjid and the finish of the masjid here, it was close to $2 million being spent on these buildings. No employees were there. Projects were very primitive, so the expenses for normal services or anything will be in the tens of thousands. so it's not much. Mostly for the buildings that's been happening. From 2011 to 2020, the annual budgets reached up to almost $1 million and over, including the center building and the center in Wandana, and all these projects that you've been hearing about it from the morning, and obviously the added people on the books as employees. What we're looking for from 2021 and beyond, you need to maintain it. If you're going to drop it, it's going to be very much noticeable. Currently, where we're getting the money from? Donations. And by far, donations are the major contributor to our budget. And if you're talking about $1 million a year budget, including some other contribution from grants, and I'll come to it, so the mostly is from donations. So donations will be about 60 to 70%. And before you start to discuss around the tables things, if you are trying to think of any income stream that will generate about $600,000 a year on any investment that we need to do, the best investments that can give you 5%, so 600,000 as a 5%, you need about $10 million. Direct projects, donation and funding, that's what mostly has been happening. Fundraising events, very unsuccessful, I must say. You do 10 of them and you barely break even with the cost of the food that you're putting on the table. Crisis campaigns, they are successful, but they are getting more into the theme of breaking even with the events. Zakat, it hasn't been tapped for our society. We don't have a project for that, and we don't know how to administer it, and the beneficiaries are not really coming through that process as well. Grants, since 2011 and further, had increased dramatically, and they mostly linked to governments, local and state and federal, and I will come to it. They are very important. They are funding some of the programs that's been discussed through the day, but I will touch on it. But as you can see, it's mostly from the donations, and we need to keep that in mind. What we have funding for is, as I said, the upkeeps, building projects, because that's what we've been doing, imams' wages, employees' wages, and the event expenses, Arabic and Quranic schools and sessions. We are keeping up. Once we pay all of that, in most of days, we are just within the budget for the year. So whatever the donation, whatever the grants, just goes to that or these projects so far. So any suggestions that have been made today, if we need to start implementing them, we need more funding. Social crisis, I'm sure you've discussed these things, people in need, scholarships, forward planning and forecasts, we don't have money for it. So if we need to do any of that, we need to go back to the community and get more donations or wait for grants. Acquisitions and opportunities like assets or anything else, we don't have any money for that. I'm not doing badly. The disadvantages of the current system, as you can see, it's limited to donations, and that needs to be coming from the people who are coming to the masjids or coming to these events. It's very restrictive because you don't know how much the people will be donating today or tomorrow or next week. And most of the times we don't know how we're going to do it. It's really cyclical because in Ramadan we have higher donations. Other than close to Christmas time, donations will go down because people go on holidays or they have commitments. Eid times is very much cyclical, and you can't predict it. Or we can predict it, but we can't really wait for it or do anything without it. It can be a burden to the community because you always, the time that they come, you say, please donate, please donate, please donate. We need to do this, we need to do that. It's a message that is recurring, and you see most of us standing in the masjid after the prayer saying, please continue donating. For the grants, it might be a matter of independence. So far, with the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the good people that they're working for the committee, we've been maintaining our independence from any political party to affiliate with them. We work with all of them, but usually these grants comes with a tag that they want some loyalty or something in return, generally. The advantages of it, no system without advantages. It keeps the community engaged because when you say to the people, we're having this project, please donate for it, they can see a value for it, they donated for that, and they see the return that we have administered or delivered it very well. It is service focused, so if the service is there, they pay for it. If the service is not there, they don't pay for it, rather than just keep donating and then nothing happens. It is simple and easy to administer because the money is there, then you go and spend it. If the money is not there, you say, we can't do it. It is linked to the size of the community. The more the community grows, the more the donation will come. In 2001, when I first prayed here, it was a very small community. Most of the donation will not go more than $100 in most of times. But as the size of the community goes up, it gets better. What we can do, when you're going to discuss it, if you were going to discuss about investments, you need to be specific about, okay, investments, they generally will give you a return of 3%. So each 100,000 will generate $3,000. So 1 million will generate 30,000. That's investment-wise. 10 millions will get you 300,000. And our budget is about close to $1 million these days, with the buildings and everything that we're trying to do. Acquiring income-generating assets is it's better than acquiring assets, or sorry, businesses is better than the assets. So the business can be continuously and done, and you don't need much capital to do it. We really need to have corporate support rather than individuals, because the corporates pay higher or usually donate higher because they can offset it with some tax benefits. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm happy to join you in this major conference. I'm going to talk, inshallah, about the finance matters in general of the Islamic society. Yeah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inshallah, today I'm going to talk about the income, expenses, government stimulus in COVID-19 period, and the liabilities, the major liabilities of the community. As we can see here, since 2012, total income increased by 2.7 times, which means 63%. And the major income come from the donation, which is 59% of the total income, and the second one is from the grant, which is 19%. And many other income like fundraising sometimes for the Salam festivals or other festivals. But those two are the major things for the community. On the other hand, the expenses increased as well. In 2012, the total expenses were 250,000 roughly. And in 2020, it's roughly 900,000. Yeah, which means 3.8 times more than the income increase, roughly. Most of the expenses goes to the honorarium wages, which is 33% of the total income. The community has some properties and masjids. We pay the expenses for them. We have 5 main properties here and 2 centers, Marion Masjid and the center, Wandana Masjid and the center and the expansion as well, Mary Bridge, Wayala, and Mount Gambier, final one. The total value of these properties and assets roughly is more than 5 million. Yeah. During the COVID-19 period, when it started in March, the total revenue, I'm just going to compare the first quarter of this year with the first quarter of last year. Total revenue in September quarter was roughly 124,000 this year, which reduced by 38% compared to the same period in 2019, which was 198,000, as you can see, just for 3 months, first quarter. Donations, which represent the major income, reduced in this period by 26% compared to last year. And the grants reduced by 64%. Now, we could get some advantage and benefits from the government stimulus during the COVID-19 period. Alhamdulillah, we passed the tests and we could get job keeper and cash flow boost, which is 26,000 roughly for this 3 months only, which when we count the whole period, it's around 100,000. But for this 3 months, it's 26,000. By getting this amount, we could reduce the reduction in income, which was, if you remember, 38,000. Now it's 25,000 when we add this figure to our income. Also, on the other hand, we could save in the expenses.
I mean 25%, not
No, it was before the revenue reduced by 38% without the cash flow.
So 25% reduction.
Now it's 25% reduction when we add the government stimulus. And we could also save another 32,000 or 33,000 roughly in the expenses for this period as well, which added another 25% in saving in the income. Now for the liabilities here, as you know, for the community, the new vision of the community wants to add a new properties for the youth and for the community. So the expansion for the center and for Wandana cost the center around 2 million, as you said, roughly. 1.5 million here and roughly $500,000 there. Alhamdulillah, the rest of those liabilities, we have 150 for this center here, 150,000, and still we have to pay 173,000 for Wandana. So the total liability is 323,000. That's it.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm not as tall as the professor, you know. So So I've got to come down to his level. My friends, today I want to discuss this issue of WAQF. It is such an important institution in Islam, you know, and it's a pity that we don't understand what WAQF has done to the Muslim Ummah. We can go back even further than the Prophet ﷺ's time, even to Prophet Adam alayhi salam. We can trace WAQF to that period. However, we won't go back that far. The institution of WAQF started, according to numerous reports, that it started off with the building of the Kaaba. In some narrations it says that the first WAQF was that established when the well of Zamzam was established, because it was a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and it was open to everyone. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam during his time also established WAQF on a number of occasions. It is reported that the first WAQF that was established was one that was associated with the Masjid of Quba when he arrived from Mecca, and that was the first masjid. It was not a masjid as such, but it was donated and it later became established as a masjid. And shortly thereafter we know that he acquired some property from two orphans and he built a masjid, and that was the second one. Thereafter, Umar radiallahu anh acquired some property in the north of Arabia, in Khaybar, and he came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, look, I have this property and I want to give it to the Ummah. He said, why don't you do this? You can bequeath, you can give it over to an establishment, and now we know that as WAQF, and the proceeds or the benefit that flows from that will then go towards maintaining the asset that you have acquired. So in other words, what the Prophet ﷺ then meant by this is, if you give something, WAQF, meaning something in trust, then the benefits that flow from that trust can then be used for various purposes. Our doctor has outlined so many expenditure there that he would like to incur, but we don't have the money for that. Where do we get the money from? One of the earliest forms of matching income with expenditure was a WAQF, where people donated assets to the establishment. So when, after the demise of the Prophet ﷺ, Umar radiallahu anh, called a few of the Sahabas and he said, look, I'm going to donate some of the assets and I need a few of you to be witness. As soon as he did that, the reports, the historical reports said that so many of the Sahabas came and they said, we also want to donate property. SubhanAllah, you know, the vigor and the enthusiasm to contribute to Islam was so great at that time. But I think that we do have in our community people with well-meaning intention, people that want to contribute, but we need the institution, we need the setup. We need to establish something where we can, by the will of Allah, we can go and reach out to people and say, look, we have this institution and we can use this institution for the benefit of the community. I have seen in my time as an accountant and also in my profession as an Islamic scholar, not in this country as well as in South Africa, that people have donated over the years very, very generously. And I've seen also where property was once upon a time lying idle, WAQF property was just lying idle, and somebody had the good idea of going and say, let's establish an income-producing property with that. As a result of which, today those same institutions are in a situation where they can afford to do so many community work, social work, educational work, and so forth. We really, really need those institutions in our presence here. You know, our distinct tradition, our Islamic tradition is so rich in its culture, in its educational endeavors, in so many fields of education, science, medicine, whatever you want to call it. We are the ones, we Muslims are the ones that showed the world what education is worth. And we did that primarily through the WAQF. It is said that in Algeria, once upon a time, 80% of the land belonged to WAQFs. In Egypt, probably the same percentage. Of course, one of the disadvantages of WAQFs is that when you donate property, who looks after that property? Because if it doesn't have a caretaker or curator, it becomes very, very difficult. And nobody wants to assume the responsibility of looking after something if there's no benefit to them. Now here's an important principle. If I want to donate something to the community, a property for example, invariably what happens is that after my death, it has to be looked after. Now there's nobody that will come forward and say, well, I'll look after this property. Therefore, we have established now in the West and in Islamic countries, institutions of WAQF that are legal structures. I'm going to come to that. This photo that you see here, you know, it has a lot of meaning in it. Unfortunately, it's obscured by this here. But they say a photo is worth 1,000 words. It expresses a thing. This is what our tradition was, education. And it is education that the Prophet ﷺ established. You know, so if you want to go back to our roots, this is what our roots was. The theme that was expressed over and over in this conference, the first session, second session, and this session here is education. Of course, if you want to educate our children, you have to have the means. To have the means, you have to have the funds. To get the funds, you need people to donate. If people don't donate, you and I, if you don't put our hands in our pocket, you tell me where is this going to come from. You know that the Anglican and the Catholic Church are so wealthy. They're so wealthy that they are able to go around and they can build all these institutions. Unfortunately, we don't have that. And yet, we were the ones to establish WAQFs. So, my question to you is, what do we need to do now? If we keep on saying that we need money, it's not going to come. We have to make some effort. I believe that we have the people, we have the expertise, and we have the ability to establish ourselves in such a format where we can establish a legal framework for establishing a WAQF. The WAQF that I'm referring to is WAQF Khairi, the WAQF that is established as a common good for the community. There are other individual WAQFs, but I will not go into it. You and I as an individual, we can set up a WAQF. In this country, we call it a trust. Now, we're not going to go into the private trust. That is an issue that does not concern us here. What does concern us are issues to do with communal property. It's quite involved in its legal setup, but the good thing is that once a person establish a WAQF, so let's assume that 10 of us get together and we say, okay, we're going to establish a WAQF. We then have the authority, the legal authority, to go and establish that as an institution where we can go and collect funds and people can donate property to that WAQF. Once that is established, then we can say to ourselves that all donations that come into the WAQF will be used to establish an institution where we can use the benefit that accrues from that for all our activities. What can we do with our WAQF? First of all, we can use the WAQF money to establish passive investments. Passive investment means putting it into property where you get a fixed or variable income which is reasonably stable over a long period. And we can use what we call the usufruct, or the income that comes from that property, use it for expenditure that our Dr. Fran has outlined earlier. So here is just a few details on the legalities and what WAQFs involves. The bottom line is that if we establish a WAQF, then it is our incumbent on us to look after the property. And I know that there is an institution in, was it Sydney? That has already established this, and they had been given a property by some very kind person, and this person said, look, I have this property and I want to give it in WAQF. I want to give it in Sadaqah. I want to donate it. Now, Alhamdulillah, that person was very generous. The problem they had then was, well, we have this property, what do we do with it? And so the thinking started to establish a proper institution. They have today established that institution. They have done a lot of work. They've gone to considerable lengths and spent a lot of money in legal expenses to establish. We can, if we want to, emulate their model, or we can work together with them to establish a WAQF. This is something that is still under discussion, and we hope, inshallah, that with support from the community, that we can replicate what was done in Sydney, or perhaps even establish a partnership arrangement with that, such that we can use some of the legal structures to establish our own WAQF here. So it is not that we are totally ignorant of the law. We make use of the law in the same way that other communities are making use of the law. So in many ways, the structure that we're looking at, more or less, forget about the names here, but let's say we set up a WAQF, call it a Nur Foundation. That foundation can then hold, oh my goodness, can hold all the assets in its name. Here is a property trust here. It's a corporate trustee. The model that we want to use will not use a PTY Limited. but we will use a company incorporated by guarantee. In other words, that company does not have shareholders, and that company is run by people like you and I, and we don't benefit out from it. So it does not belong to us, it belongs to someone, it belongs to the community. All income then can be used for social services, medical services, drug rehabilitation, cemetery, funeral, and educational trust as well. So in short, this is more or less a structure that we're looking at. We hope that inshallah, you know, over time, we can establish something of the sort, together with a lot of help from our friends in Sydney. And I believe that we have enough potential here in our community to establish something. And I must tell you that, you know, we as a community, we always think that it is only men that are capable of running WAQFs. But do you know that the WAQFs that were established, the educational WAQFs, the first one was established by a lady. So I'm telling my sisters that you have a role in this as well. You are not outsiders. We need all of us to be able to put our heads together, our efforts together to establish this. If we can do that, I think a lot of our problems with regard to expenditure, with regard to what we want to do, you know, there's so many things that we'd like to do. We'd like to establish libraries, we'd like to establish social centers, we'd like to establish any number of social institutions. And as the doctor said, where do we get the money? I also believe that there are a lot of well-meaning people in the community that will say, okay, I've reached an age now where I really have acquired money, and I think I can donate some of that to a WAQF. But if we don't have the institution, we'll always be disadvantaged. Having one establishes something. Having nothing means that we'll always carry on the way we are carrying on. I'm not going to go into the details here. The details are rather technical. But I invite you to ask questions, and we can then, you know, answer these questions gradually. We can have another session and another session. I think even if we have 10 sessions, to be able to establish it, we should. Until then, we are going to be economically disadvantaged. Yeah. Yeah. I can go on.
I'm surprised. Very good, excellent, mashallah, jazakumullah khair. Please, can you please take a seat? You're scaring me. Please. See, I knew it. Yes, a few more things.
You know, I know this man for the past 25 years, and he gives me a lot of problems. What do you think I should do? If you give me I want to donate him to a WAQF. What do you think? Mashallah. No, alhamdulillah, Professor and I, this was something that we've been talking about for the past 10, 15 years. You know, in the West they call it foundations and endowments. Call it what you want to. The bottom line is that we have to establish something. Last point? Last point is there are a lot of institutions in the Middle East, WAQF institutions with a lot of money. I got it. There are WAQF institutions in the one that I want to go through is this one here. It's established by the Islamic Development Bank. Now, the Islamic Development Bank has about $1.2 billion. and they can assist in the building of schools and educational institutions. To the extent to which we qualify for those grants, we can, if we have the institution, approach them and say, look, we have an institution or we want to establish an institution, can you assist? So these are some of the possibilities. Thank you.
MashaAllah. Give me the mic. Excellent. Jazakallah khair. Because we have 15 minutes before Asr, we'll change the structure a little bit. Those who need to go and make wudu, please feel free at any time to leave and go and make your wudu. Otherwise, I want to open the floor for Q&A and ask your questions to our panel, inshallah ta'ala, either regarding the financials of the ISSA or anything to do with WAQF. I realize it was an intense session and there may be more questions are needed for clarifications. So let's spend the next 10 minutes simply asking questions. After Salah, we'll resume into the working groups where we can talk about what are the positives and the gaps and the recommendations. So questions. Who has questions for our panel? Please ask.
I want to ask you, Dr. Wali, about WAQF. We have a similar, I think 5 years ago, a similar project about WAQF, I think the butcher.
Yes.
So can you please explain, it was negative or positive, or is it a good experience or not?
Yes. The WAQF as but I'll talk about the project as it is. That was we thought at the time it's an excellent opportunity, but unfortunately the community was not ready for it. The reason why the community was not ready for it because we probably, as always, it's not the fault of one side, it's both sides. So from us, we were new as a committee, and we didn't do enough study of what are the needs and how we can cater for the needs. So that's from our side. And from the community, they were not ready for a WAQF per se. They don't have that mentality. If they go and buy from there, they're going to support the society. So that was the thing. So their understanding from the WAQF was, instead of supporting the society, they wanted to support themselves by getting a much cheaper product, cost-wise for their needs for the butcher and stuff. So we've learned from that, and in the future we need to have more study before we get into that. But as probably you've seen from my presentation and from Dr. Nadi, the best thing is that to get these businesses that they can, individuals, they will say, okay, from now I had enough, whatever it is, I'm going to put my business as a WAQF, because that will be very easy to manage. All the income, all the administration, whatever, comes to the society, and it's already well established than establishing a new thing. So it's a successful, continuous, and moves on. And that will generate income and be in the WAQF system.
Jazakallah khair. Any other questions? Please, Dr.
I was looking from an education point of view. I would like from you to explain the thought of ISSA towards education regarding the priority of funding education.
The priority for funding?
Yeah,
from the ISSA
budget to the education.
From the budget. Education, I think it's probably on par of all even the imams. So whenever the education comes, so the imam wages and the education is probably on par, and obviously the employees, that we have to pay them because they are working for us. So so we have the committee looks into this as a matter of urgency and has to be committed for. The problem is that the expansion of it probably is that what you're trying to ask for. The expansion for it, as I said, because of the limited income, and we can't really forecast how much is going to come from the donation, our expansion in the education is going slowly. But in expansion matter, and you know very well, if you go back to 2010, when Sheikh Riyadh first came to here, we had a very small school and was barely 20 students, and now I think they are in the hundreds, 250, there you go. So that's a 10 times increase, and the number of teachers we had just Imam Riyadh at the time, and now you have at 25, so there you go. So it is expanding, it is slower pace, but Ahmed might be happy to get more into that.
Yeah. So yeah, this good question, Dr. Ahmed. Regarding the education, so the view of the society during the last 10 years is to spend more money about like to build centers and mosques. Nowadays, we changed our vision and said we have to stop building and buy mosques. We have to
Yep.
focus more about society,
Yep.
and education is number one of like this thing.
Yes, it's
So
very
we don't have the budget exactly how much we are going to spend on it, but that's why we are here to put the view and the budget for the next year, inshallah.
Marshall, excellent question, and the point is very good. I think one way forward is to then stipulate a certain percentage, perhaps, of the budget to go towards education.
And education is to many levels, like Saturday schools is one, but we're aiming, because Professor Muhammad Abdullah is involved to some extent with this, we are trying to get education across the board. So, inshallah, we'll elaborate more.
Slim.
Yep.
Inshallah. Sorry, there was a hand up there first, and then I'll come to you, Brother Adnan. Please.
Yeah, if that's a continuation, brother can continue. I have a question on
Okay, please continue.
Just commenting on that one. There was a lot of planning and ideas about the education and improving the education. One of them is actually to have our own asset, our own school, and working 7 days a week. Actually, that was discussed maybe 5 or more years ago.
It's still.
But it's still under study because of resources and because of other things. So it needs planning. The plans and papers are there, the ideas are there. Once we, I think with this conference, we establish the needs and the forecast for the future, then we can say how much we're going to spend on
Inshallah.
education.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Brother?
Regarding WAQF, I have one question. Is there a difference between WAQF and Baitul Mal? And if yes, does it relate to one thing relate to property and the other relate to, donations in money or something?
Dr. Mahmoud, is there a difference between Waqf and Baytul Mal?
Oh yes, there is. There's a lot of difference, a big difference.
Is the mic working, guys? Go
Well,
ahead.
The first difference is that a WAQF is a trust that is established by yourself or few people. A Baitul Mal is a general, it involves the whole community. It is not something that is established by a person. It is a communal thing, it is something that is established by a state or a government. So these are the fundamental differences. However, in its operation, there may be some similarities, but these are operational differences. The legal structures are vastly different. You and I cannot establish a Bait al-Mal independently in this country. It's outside our jurisdiction and our powers to do that.
So does that mean that in WAQF we can donate money as well?
Of course you could.
Okay.
Yeah. But the point here is, if you don't have the institution, who do you donate it to?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent.
So, I mean, the first principles is to establish the institution and then ask people that we have the institution, now it is up to you to make the donations there.
Inshallah, last question or comment from the brother at the back there, and no, this brother here, and then we can break for Salah, inshallah.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, everyone. Just a quick question here regarding the percentage increase in the investment. I feel like 3% is quite less over the span of 10 years. Is there any other alternatives you guys have looked or thought about, investing into different areas where you can get maybe higher percentages of, return over the span of the year, and that money can be invested, used different, where you want to use?
Well, look, I guess investments can be anything, but I'm just putting a ballpark figure. in any, if you have a house and you want to rent it, it will be 3% max from the value of the total house. And if you have anything else, these are for assets. So that's why I am, as if I suggest for anything for the community, and that's why the brother, he's asked about the butcher or the meat venture, the services can generate higher because the capital is not there. So, if you have, say, a shop that will be donating the money for the society, the whole income will go there. That's higher than just an asset and you rent it, or you buy, say, a farm and whatever the income from it. There's not much of money comes from there. So that's ballpark figure, and you might get higher, you might get 7%, you might get even 8%, but in the need, as you can see, and 60% of our income is from donation. To cover that, you need a large sum of assets to get that to cushion your budget.
Jazakallah khair. Well, thank you very much for your questions. Thanks for the answers. Please, a round of applause for the panelists. Asr Salah, can I please ask you, please come back after Asr Salah. It's an important session to end the day with your recommendations and suggestions for finances and awqaf. So after Asr Salah, we'll resume, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. MashaAllah. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. دخل جوا عند دكتور وليد الخزرجي، أين أنت؟ اخرج من المطبخ. Ahmed. All right, last table. Did you want to post your brothers? You want to post yours? All right. Thank you. Thank you. 1 minute. ما شاء الله ما شاء الله صحة وعافية. تفضلوا. أين الدكتور وليد؟ For third time. صحيح؟ طب تفضل اجلس. All right, let's start with this table. Please, one spokesperson from your table, tell us about what you've discussed, some of the positives that you heard, some of the gaps, and some of the key recommendations, please. خلاص كان موجود الآن راح دخل على المطبخ. All right, thank you. Can we have your attention, please? I know we. Thank you, ladies.
Hello.
Thank you. Go on.
So our positives are
Yeah, you can go there.
So we are at the moment profit and loss is even, so we haven't any loss, but there is no profit, unfortunately. So we have increase of our assets, and we have already, alhamdulillah, achieved big projects like here and there, Bandana. So we have identified some gaps. So gaps are there is no enough income. Second one is no sustainability, and there is a limited fundraising, no monthly subscription for income generating, and no regular income. And recommendation. So we have few recommendations to fill these gaps.
Yes.
So first of all, we need a permanent income to for this masjid, and we do not rely on the donation. We have it. The asset should generate their own income. For let's suppose we have to go to the real estate, generating income. Let's suppose to make a one story above this, or for the rental purposes. Second, we need to make some groups in the masjid somewhere for the people of 10, 5, and give them a task to make or generate that kind. To make a money for around whatever is decided. Third one is to so we need to ask for the interstate donations. So because we have to pay our loan, so if we raise our voice for to generate a income for to pay the loan, we can ask to.
MashaAllah, that's enough, inshallah.
And one is very important too. If we make any, any group on the Facebook that will ask for for the money and ask for for to pay the loan, and
MashaAllah.
that would be very helpful.
Excellent. Jazakumullah khair. These some very good suggestions. I hope you're taking note of that so that you can respond to some of these. This table here with Brother Adnan and the sisters and the doctor, some of the key recommendations, perhaps, some of the challenges. Thank you.
Just the recommendations?
If there are anything that hasn't been mentioned in terms of challenges.
I missed the part, but we think that in terms of positives, very organized work from the committee and the community. It is improving dramatically over the years. The ability to get grants and increase it over time is very positive, and the sense of responsibility from the committee and the community. The challenges are needing more income for all the activities that we are aspiring to achieve, and how to do that. There are a few ideas: improve the grant applications or increase the grant applications, more sponsorships through corporate and individual. Someone suggested the halal certificates again, to try and check if we can go through that. The WAQF idea, that's a long-term thing for the future. Regular small donations like a direct debit. So maybe $10, $20 a month. If you have thousands of people who can donate on a regular basis, that will generate a continuous income. Exploring the zakah, if someone would like to donate zakah to the community, and improve the fundraising activity would be the more professional way of do fundraising.
Excellent, very good. Straight to the point. Jazakumullah khair. And last but not least.
Bismillah, okay. So I think pretty much the same topics were discussed here as well. The budget has increased, which was a positive, and the general feedback was that the success of the projects was really good. We saw that in the Al Salam Center and the one that is happening in the Wandana Masjid as well. So it's good that the committee is looking into the investment strategies as well, which is all the positives we got from this table. And I think there was some feedback about how we can make it a bit more transparent about how the money is being used, and so that people have the confidence in the system, that the investment is being made in a fair and justifiable manner. And also there was some feedback about how we can further inform and educate people about Islamic loans. Like, people were not aware of the WAQF system, and we are in a new country, so we don't have the know-how of how super works and how whether that is halal and whatnot. So that might be something that we can do to educate our community a bit more. How we can, of course, there was also the focus of grants as well. We talked about that, and talking about using premises for income generation purposes, where we can use vacant premises for generating more income. Have I covered everything?
Excellent. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much. So I'll just give the opportunity to the panel if you want to respond to any of these points before we...
Because Walid is not here, inshallah, I'm going to answer.
He wasn't.
I didn't see him, sorry.
Brief responses, please.
So which one, which one would start? We'll start with from the last one. So the good for the positives that you all picked the thing that we increased the income along the years, and all the projects being completed almost for the building of the centers or the masjids. The challenges, as you said, they were all in the same things. Now, increasing the grants or focus on the grants. The grants are linked to whatever the government will be opening for us to apply for. We cannot apply for things that they are not open. And the government can any time change the grants or change the rules or reduce the grants or reduce the availability of the grants. So to rely on grants is not a good strategy. They are supplemental. They are there. You can't ignore them, but to rely on them is just a bit difficult. Using the assets to generate income by hiring venues or things. The problem is that you have multiple things. First of all, they will clash with your own activities that you're trying to provide for the community. Especially when a few previous sessions you said we want more regular sessions, more target for families, for kids, for elderlies, for this. This needs time and needs the space. And if you hire the space for a commercial use, you're going to have a clash. And which one get priority? And the priority, obviously, for these sessions to go ahead and benefit the wider community. The second thing is that what are the activities that we can hire these venues? Weddings are very limited because most of the centers are attached to the masjids, and rarely these days weddings will not have music, and we're not going to be able to do that. Okay. Funerals, it's very hard to charge the people who just had a calamity through their family. Other social ones, like for newborns and something, we can. It's not a lot of income, and how much per hour we're going to be doing that, and with other sessions.
Would there be any consideration for any future investments in this space, buying other investment properties?
The investments are, first, if you have, the categories of investments, either you invest in properties to buy them and rent them, and as I said, that they have challenges of their own because you need the capital available. And one of the things is that say there are ideas, and one of the ideas when I was coming to here, you say, let's have a project, say, we will make the society $1 million, okay? And we try to accumulate the donation from them. We have a target, and once we get it, we have another conference. We say, what are we going to do with this $1 million we just collected over 2 years? And then you can say, yep, we're going to buy this property or that property. That's one option. The second thing is that on the same vibe, you collect the money, and one of the brothers here I think he left us. He said you might invest in, say, index on the share market, and that will give a growth and give some income. But there is a limitation with that, what company and what's that company activity, and the ethicals and the religious part of it, so that's another different. The other investment is that if you buy a business and get the people to generate the income, that's another way of it. So what the bottom line, if you've read my presentation, you need a management board. So from our board to have that as another function, that's big arts, because you need first people who specialize in that. They need to volunteer their time to come forward. We'll say 3 of us, we are an accountant, like Dr. Nadi, and I'm investment specialist, and I am whatever it is, and they form that sort of management committee, and they come, they say, let's help you, and they approach the community, there is credibility, we collect the money, they have a transparency, as you said, publish all of these things, it's a process. But that's one of the things that we need to have from this conference, and we need to look forward to it.
Dr. Mahmoud, you want to Jazakallah khair, Dr. Walid?
I just want to add,
Just use the mic because
you know, when we were in Brisbane at this masjid, there were a group of brothers there that were selling, after Friday prayers, they were selling food, what do you call it? Food packs. And they were doing it, and they're still doing it for at least for 10 or more years. They collect over the year at least between $70,000 and $80,000. And the meat was donated by a brother who's a butcher. So every week he used to donate the meat, and somebody used to donate the rice, and someone else would donate whatever. The point is, it is a form of income. Now, a small, pack of, let's say, biryani, for example, was selling for $7, $8. Now, you might think that that is small money. Over the year, it does add up. 70, 80,000 is quite a bit of money. And I think that can be one sort of a small project that the masjid can undertake.
well, that's right. And I remember that, I mean, it's exactly, and it was a nice project. People want to eat after Jum'ah. And it used to make the masjid $70,000, $80,000 annually easy. So that's one thing, you can use the kitchen here. You have, mashallah, good cooks. All right, because of time, I'm very aware of time. We need to finish on time, inshallah ta'ala. Does anyone have any other comments they would like to make? Brother Fahim.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I was just having a comment on brothers saying on the topic of funding or grants. We had this discussion before in the mosque. Obviously, in my opinion, or the way I'm working, obviously these days with the NGOs, it should be opposite of what you have now, because you have 70% or 60% of the funding or money is coming from the donations, and 30 or 40% coming from other side, from the everything else. I think at least you should target 50% from the grants, from the governments. There are lots of grants, obviously. It's not just the Department of Cabinet, so Jingli or this. The organization I work at the moment, we get $120 million a year, and this all coming from the government funding. There is nothing, any donations in it. So there are some sort of procedures to be followed or to be looked on, and I think that is the best, because we have many problems in the community at the moment. Like you talk from the mental health to disability, thousands of others problems, and the government looking for an area or organizations to work in this sort of subjects. And I think that's my comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. You're quite right, but the thing is that the philosophy is different from an NGO, which is only service provision, to a society which wants to encompass so many things. We want to acquire assets that, probably in 10 years, this masjid and this center will not be enough. You need to go north and west. And to achieve that, you can't do it from grants. The next thing is that, yes, for service provision like mental health or something, yes, that's what we're doing through the grants. But unfortunately, the grants are, if they're available today, might be withdrawn tomorrow. What are you going to do with the employee that you employed on that service? And that continuity, or to hold on to your people, you need to get it a bit more predictable. So we're trying to get the grants. We're not going to say we're not, but we need more reliable sources.
Jazakumullah khair. I know we can keep going forever. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much. This brings our session to an end. From my side, Jazakumullah khair for your exceptional contribution to this conference, your thoughts, your ideas, the discussions, were really fabulous. It exceeded my expectations, that's for sure. To close off the conference, I'll hand on over again to the President of the Islamic Society, Brother Ahmed, to offer the vote of thanks and to close the conference. Jazakumullah khair.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, to be honest with you, this is our first conference since 1955, for like 65 years. We have such kind of conference. It is very good for our society and our community. And the type of the people who come and turn out today, believe me, is make everyone happy, because the type of concern and input and feedback, recommendation, really is going to help the society for the long term. And after we've had many recommendations from your side, the first reaction from Noor and Zuhair, they said you are going to employ 20 people to serve the community well, because 2 persons is not enough. And when we talk about the volunteering, I really had big experience with the volunteering during the last 10 years. And it is really big issue for the society and for every single community. And the only solution for it is to have paid position people, because the only time you can use the volunteers is only on the event, on the day of the event. But for preparation and follow up, you need the full paid position people. And just let you know, inshallah, when we have the next, when we finish, inshallah, the Wandana Community Center, we are going to have another offices there as well. And inshallah, we are going to ask the community there to have a small conference, not big like that, but as well, we are going to ask them what they need to use the whole or the center for, because it's going to be a first experience for them, and we are going to help them to have the same services and activities here. If we want to talk about all this subject, believe me, we are not going to finish even for 1 week, not just 1 day. But the thing that we have it for the first time, is not going to stop here. Inshallah, we are going to have this discussion more and more. And inshallah, all your valid recommendation and input, feedback, even complaints, because as Imam Riyaz said at the beginning, it's very constructive complaint. We are going to take it seriously, and we are going ahead, inshallah, to see how can implement it. Finally, I would like to thank every single one, the imams, the committee, the officers, Noor and Zuhair, mashallah, he just left because he wants to sleep. He hasn't slept all the night. And lastly, we thank Professor Muhammad Abdullah, because really he gave a lot, how to say it, really it's very hard to explain how he managed this conference. Mashallah, he done it in a way, attract every single person to stay in this one. And believe me, no one can do it except him in other life. Thank you very much, Professor Muhammad. We really appreciate everything. And if anyone has seen the social video, you can see that Professor Muhammad Abdullah been helping the society since 2013. Time's up. Okay, thank you, honey. We will be finished. So Professor Abdullah is helping the society since 2013, and the type of connection between us and him, as if he's big part of the society now. Okay, so it's not just helping and asking for him. He's really part of the society, and mashallah, we really appreciate everything you do. Finally, thank you very much for coming, and hopefully you enjoy this conference, and hopefully you understand how we are doing and how we are doing in society and country. And thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.